Have you ever wondered about the mysterious creatures hidden within the pages of the Bible? From the terrifying Leviathan and the untamable Behemoth to the awe-inspiring four living creatures and the enigmatic Nephilim. The Bible is filled with descriptions of beings that leave us in wonder and awe. What do they mean? Are they real? And what can they teach us about God, creation, and ourselves? In this video, we'll uncover the secrets behind every mysterious creature in the Bible, including the dragon of Revelation, the locusts of Abaddon, the cherubim, and even the unicorn. These creatures aren't just the stuff of legends, they carry profound truths about God's power, judgment, and glory. Stay with us until the very end because we'll explore not just the meaning behind these beings, but how they connect to your faith today. And don't forget to like this video. Subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more exciting content like this. If something surprises or inspires you, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And please share this video with your friends and family to help us spread the truth of God's Word far and wide. Let's dive in and discover the mysteries of the Bible together. Number 1, Leviathan. The Leviathan is one of the most vividly described creatures in the Bible, especially in Job chapter 41. God speaks to Job, detailing the creature's overwhelming power as a demonstration of his own unmatched sovereignty. The Leviathan is portrayed as a mighty sea creature. It has terrifying teeth, with armor-like scales so tightly joined that no air can pass between them, and its breath is said to ignite flames, producing smoke and sparks. Job 41 verses 14 to 21. This imagery gives Leviathan an almost dragon-like quality, contributing to its mythical status. In Isaiah 27 verse 1, Leviathan is called a twisting serpent, slain by God as part of his victory over chaos and evil. This verse connects the Leviathan to ancient symbols of disorder, framing it as a cosmic enemy of divine order. Leviathan is also briefly mentioned in Psalm 104 verse 26, where it is depicted as frolicking in the sea, emphasizing its enormous size and power while being entirely under God's control. This dual portrayal, both as a playful creation and a terrifying force, underscores God's authority over all creation, even the most fearsome beings. The Leviathan often symbolizes chaos, evil, or adversarial forces. In ancient Near Eastern mythology, sea monsters like Tiamat, Babylonian, or Yam, Canaanite, were often associated with chaos. And Leviathan appears to draw on this cultural context. However, unlike these myths, the Bible portrays God as fully in control of Leviathan, highlighting his supreme power over both creation and chaos. Some interpretations see Leviathan as a representation of Satan or evil forces, particularly in its role as an enemy of God in Isaiah 27. 1. The creature embodies the ultimate opposition to divine order but is ultimately subdued by God, enforcing his power and justice. Leviathan serves as a reminder of the vastness of God's creation and the limits of human understanding. In Job 41 verses 10 to 11, God challenges Job, asking, "Who then is able to stand against me? Who has a claim against me that I must repay?" Leviathan, despite its terrifying might, is entirely under God's control, emphasizing his sovereignty. For Christians, Leviathan's portrayal as a defeated foe in Isaiah 27 verse 1 parallels Satan's ultimate defeat by Christ. Just as God triumphs over Leviathan, he will triumph over all forms of evil and chaos, bringing eternal peace and order. Number 2, Behemoth. The Behemoth is introduced in Job 40 verses 15 to 24 as one of God's grand creations. A creature so powerful and majestic that it demonstrates God's unrivaled sovereignty. The Behemoth is described as a land animal that eats grass like an ox, Job 40 verse 15, suggesting it is a herbivore. Its physical strength is emphasized repeatedly, its strength is in its loins, and its power in the muscles of its belly, Job 40 verse 16. One of the most striking features attributed to the Behemoth is its tail, described as being like a cedar, Job 40 verse 17. This comparison to a massive tree highlights its imposing size and strength. Its bones are said to be tubes of bronze, and, like bars of iron, Job 40 verse 18, portraying it as an indestructible creature. The text also mentions that it resides near rivers and under the shade of lotus plants, unbothered by raging waters, Job 40 verses 21 to 23. The behemoth is often seen as a representation of untamed power in creation. Its peaceful nature, grazing on grass despite its immense strength, serves as a reminder that even the most powerful creatures are under God's control. God uses the behemoth to challenge Job, essentially asking, "If you cannot contend with this creature, how can you contend with me?" This shifts the focus from Job's suffering to God's sovereignty over all creation. Behemoth's depiction as immovable and impervious to danger also symbolizes stability, strength, and the overwhelming grandeur of God's works. It stands as a metaphor for the enduring power of God's creation, which humans cannot rival or tame. From a spiritual standpoint, the behemoth is a testament to God's creative power and wisdom. It highlights humanity's smallness in the face of God's grandeur. In Job 40 verse 19, God says, "It ranks first among the works of God. Yet its maker can approach it with his sword." This verse reinforces that no matter how powerful or untamable creation may seem, it is ultimately subject to the Creator's will. For Job, the behemoth is a reminder of his limited understanding and authority compared to God's boundless wisdom and control. It serves as a challenge to Job, and to humanity, to trust in God's sovereignty over all creation, even when circumstances feel overwhelming or incomprehensible. Number 3. The first beast from the sea. The first beast from the sea is vividly described in Revelation 13 verses 1 to 10. John, in his apocalyptic vision, sees a beast rise out of the sea, having 10 horns and 7 heads. Upon its horns are 10 crowns, and on its heads are blasphemous names. Revelation 13 verse 1. The beast combines characteristics of a leopard, bear, and lion. Revelation 13 verse 2, echoing the imagery of the beasts in Daniel 7 that represented 4 successive empires. The dragon, identified as Satan in Revelation 12, gives the beast its power, throne, and authority. One of the beast's heads appears to have suffered a fatal wound but is miraculously healed, causing the world to marvel and follow the beast. This healing symbolizes the beast's resilience and deceptive allure. Revelation 13 verse 3. The beast blasphemes God, slanders his name and his dwelling, and wages war against the saints, achieving temporary authority over the world. Revelation 13 verses 5 to 7. The beast is widely interpreted as a symbol of political powers or oppressive governments that oppose God and his people. Its emergence from the sea symbolizes chaos, as the sea often represents unrest and disorder in biblical imagery. Isaiah 17 verse 12, Daniel 7 verse 2. The blending of animal traits points to the amalgamation of strength, cunning, and savagery, depicting a regime that is not only powerful but also cruel and deceitful. The blasphemous names signify arrogance and defiance against God, as these regimes or leaders often claim divine status or seek worship, undermining God's sovereignty. The apparent resurrection of one of the beast's heads represents the persistence of such powers even after seeming defeat, reinforcing their deceptive influence on humanity. Number 4. The second beast from the earth. The second beast from the earth is introduced in Revelation 13 verses 11 to 18 as a creature distinct from the first beast. While the first beast rises from the sea, symbolizing chaos, this one emerges from the earth, signifying a more grounded or deceptive form of authority. It has 2 horns like a lamb but speaks like a dragon. Revelation 13 verse 11. The lamb-like horns give it the appearance of innocence or righteousness, but its dragon-like voice reveals its true allegiance to Satan. This beast acts as an enforcer and propagandist for the first beast, wielding its authority to compel people to worship the first beast and receive its mark. Revelation 13 verses 12 to 17. It performs signs and wonders, such as making fire fall from heaven, deceiving people into creating an image of the first beast. It animates this image, causing it to speak and issuing a death sentence for those who refuse to worship it. Revelation 13 verses 13 to 15. The second beast also enforces the infamous mark of the beast, ensuring that no one can buy or sell without it. This mark, described as the number 666, is a symbol of allegiance to the first beast and opposition to God. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 18. The second beast is widely interpreted as a false prophet or system of deception, functioning to lead humanity away from God and into allegiance with worldly and ungodly powers. The lamb-like appearance symbolizes its attempt to mimic Christ or appear benevolent, while its dragon-like speech exposes its satanic origin. It serves as a warning about the dangers of false teachings and the seductive nature of deceptive authority. Its ability to mimic Christ and perform miracles highlights the need for discernment among believers. Jesus himself warned about false prophets in Matthew 24:24 who would perform great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. The mark of the beast further challenges believers to remain steadfast in their allegiance to God, even under pressure or persecution. It symbolizes the spiritual battle between conformity to the world and faithfulness to Christ. Number 5. The locusts of Abaddon. The locusts of Abaddon are one of the most terrifying and enigmatic creatures described in the Bible, found in Revelation 9 verses 1 to 11. They are unleashed during the sounding of the fifth trumpet, when a star falls from heaven to earth and is given the key to the abyss, a bottomless pit. As the abyss is opened, smoke rises, darkening the sky and the sun, and from this smoke come locusts unlike anything seen before. These locusts are not ordinary insects. Their appearance is a grotesque amalgamation of human and animal traits. Human faces, symbolizing intelligence or the ability to recognize and torment their victims personally. Crowns of gold, indicating authority or victory, possibly reflecting their power to inflict judgment. Long hair like women's hair, this may signify allure or seduction, showing their ability to deceive. Teeth like lions, representing ferocity and the ability to cause great harm. Wings like chariots, their movement is swift and overwhelming, accompanied by a deafening noise, evoking the sound of battle. Stingers like scorpions, their primary weapon. These stingers inflict intense pain, tormenting humans for 5 months without allowing death. Revelation 9 verses 5 to 6. The locusts do not harm the natural vegetation, as ordinary locusts would. Instead, they target people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Revelation 9 verse 4. They are under the command of Abaddon, Hebrew for destruction, or Apollyon, Greek for destroyer, the angel of the abyss. The locusts symbolize divine judgment unleashed on a rebellious and unrepentant world during the Great Tribulation. They are a direct response to humanity's sin, showing that rejection of God leads to suffering and torment. Their unique features suggest that they are not literal locusts but rather demonic entities or a vision of apocalyptic forces designed to terrify and warn. The locust imagery would have been particularly vivid for John's audience, as locust swarms were a real and devastating threat in the ancient world. In Exodus chapter 10:1-20, one of the plagues in Egypt involved a swarm of locusts that destroyed the land, symbolizing God's power over creation. However, the locusts in Revelation are far more terrifying, with supernatural and demonic attributes. The locusts of Abaddon serve as a stark warning about the consequences of turning away from God. They represent a foretaste of eternal judgment, emphasizing the seriousness of sin and the urgency of repentance. Their torment of those who lack God's seal underscores the protective power of faith and the devastating consequences of spiritual rebellion. For Christians, this passage is a reminder to remain faithful and steadfast, knowing that God's judgment is both righteous and inevitable. The torment inflicted by the locusts contrasts sharply with the peace and safety promised to those who follow Christ, highlighting the eternal divide between those who belong to God and those who reject Him. Number 6, the beasts of Daniel. In Daniel chapter 7, the prophet Daniel has a vivid vision of 4 beasts rising from the sea, each distinct and terrifying. These beasts are symbolic representations of 4 successive empires in human history, illustrating humanity's inclination toward corruption, tyranny, and opposition to God's kingdom. Daniel's vision culminates with the establishment of God's eternal kingdom, highlighting His sovereignty over all earthly powers. The first beast, the lion with eagle's wings, Babylon, Daniel 7 verse 4 describes a lion with eagle's wings that are eventually torn off. And it is made to stand like a man and given the mind of a man. The lion represents Babylon, known for its power and majesty, with the eagle's wings symbolizing swiftness and reach. The plucking of its wings and standing like a man may refer to the humbling of King Nebuchadnezzar, who was forced to acknowledge God's sovereignty, Daniel 4 verses 28 to 37. The second beast, the bear, Medo-Persia, Daniel 7 verse 5 portrays a bear raised up on one side, with 3 ribs in its mouth, commanded to devour much flesh. The bear symbolizes the Medo-Persian Empire. The uneven posture reflects the dominance of Persia over Media in this alliance, while the 3 ribs may represent the major conquests of this empire, such as Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. The bear's devouring nature reflects the empire's vast and aggressive expansion. The third beast, the leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, Greece, Daniel 7. 6 depicts a leopard with 4 wings and 4 heads, given authority to rule. The leopard represents the Greek Empire, led by Alexander the Great. The wings symbolize the unparalleled speed of Alexander's conquests, which spanned much of the known world in a remarkably short time. The 4 heads signify the division of the empire into 4 regions after Alexander's death, ruled by his generals, the Diadochi. The fourth beast, the terrifying beast with iron teeth, Rome, Daniel 7 verse 7 describes a beast that is terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong, with iron teeth that crush and devour everything. This beast has 10 horns, and later a little horn that uproots 3 of the 10. This beast represents the Roman Empire, unmatched in its strength and dominance. The iron teeth echo the iron legs of the statue in Nebuchadnezzar's earlier vision, Daniel 2 verses 33 to 40, symbolizing the empire's might and destructiveness. The 10 horns represent 10 kings or rulers, while the little horn is often interpreted as a ruler who blasphemes and persecutes God's people, possibly foreshadowing the Antichrist. The 4 beasts together illustrate humanity's repeated tendency toward tyranny, oppression, and self-exaltation, contrasting with God's ultimate sovereignty and justice. Each beast reflects a kingdom's unique characteristics but also shares a commonality, their opposition to God's rule and exploitation of power. The beasts of Daniel provide a profound prophetic overview of history, emphasizing God's sovereignty, justice, and ultimate victory over human corruption. They remind us that while earthly kingdoms rise and fall, God's kingdom remains unshakable. Number 7. The dragon. The dragon described in Revelation 12 is one of the Bible's most vivid representations of Satan. This creature is portrayed as a massive red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its heads, Revelation 12 verse 3. Its fiery red color symbolizes destruction, aggression, and bloodshed, while its many heads and horns represent its immense power and influence. The dragon's actions are equally terrifying. It stands before a pregnant woman, ready to devour her child as soon as it is born, Revelation 12 verse 4. This child is later identified as the Messiah, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, Revelation 12 verse 5, referencing Christ, Psalm 2 verse 9. When the child is caught up to God, the dragon turns its fury against the woman, symbolizing Israel or the church, and then against her offspring, representing God's people, Revelation 12 verses 13 to 17. The dragon's tail sweeps a third of the stars from the sky and hurls them to the earth, Revelation 12 verse 4. Often interpreted as a reference to the fall of a third of the angels in Satan's rebellion, Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 15, Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 17. Ultimately, the dragon is defeated by Michael and his angels in a heavenly battle and cast down to earth, intensifying his persecution of humanity, Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9. Despite his fury, his time is limited. As Revelation 12 verse 12 declares, "Woe to the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury, because he knows that his time is short." The dragon in Revelation chapter 12 is a multifaceted symbol representing Satan's rebellion against God, his destructive influence on earth, and his ultimate defeat. Each detail in the description carries significant meaning. 7 heads and 10 horns, these features signify Satan's widespread influence and his counterfeit authority. The 7 crowns, diadems, suggest a claim to rule, mocking the true sovereignty of God. In apocalyptic literature, horns often represent power. And the 10 horns may indicate a coalition of earthly rulers aligned with Satan's purposes, Daniel 7 verse 7, Revelation 13 verse 1. The tail sweeping stars. The dragon's tail sweeping a third of the stars is widely seen as symbolic of Satan's rebellion in heaven, where he led a faction of angels against God. These fallen angels became demons, aligning with Satan in his opposition to God's plan. Devouring the child, the dragon's attempt to destroy the Messiah reflects Satan's persistent efforts to thwart God's redemptive plan. From Herod's massacre of infants, Matthew 2 verses 16 to 18, to the temptation of Jesus, Matthew 4 verses 1 to 11, and the crucifixion, Satan sought to derail Christ's mission. However, Christ's resurrection and ascension ensured his ultimate victory over sin and death. Number 8, the Nephilim. The Nephilim are first mentioned in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4. A passage that describes a mysterious and enigmatic event in the pre-flood world. The text states, "The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose," Genesis 6 verse 2. Their offspring were the Nephilim, described as mighty men of old, men of renown, Genesis 6 verse 4. The term Nephilim is often translated as giants in some versions of the Bible, e.g., King James Version, though the Hebrew word itself means fallen ones. This passage has sparked considerable debate and intrigue throughout history due to its cryptic details and implications. There are 3 primary interpretations of the Nephilim, each offering a distinct perspective on their identity and role in biblical history. Offspring of fallen angels and humans. This view suggests that the sons of God were fallen angels who took human wives, resulting in the Nephilim. Proponents of this interpretation often cite Jude 1 verses 6 to 7 and 2 Peter 2 verse 4, which reference angels who sinned and were cast into darkness. This idea is further supported by ancient Jewish texts like the Book of Enoch, which elaborates on the union of angels and humans, describing the Nephilim as gigantic beings with extraordinary strength and wickedness. It explains the term fallen ones and aligns with the supernatural elements of Genesis chapter 6. The extraordinary size and strength of the Nephilim are consistent with this interpretation. Offspring of the line of Seth and the line of Cain. Another view interprets the sons of God as the godly descendants of Seth, Adam and Eve's son, and the daughters of men as the ungodly descendants of Cain. Their intermarriage is seen as a departure from God's will, leading to widespread corruption and the rise of the Nephilim as powerful but morally depraved individuals. It avoids supernatural explanations and keeps the focus on human behavior as the source of corruption, consistent with the broader biblical theme of sinfulness. Symbolic representation of human corruption. A more metaphorical interpretation sees the Nephilim as symbolic of human pride and corruption. They are considered mighty men of renown, because they achieved fame and power through violence and oppression, epitomizing the moral decay of the pre-flood world that prompted God's judgment. It fits within the narrative context of Genesis, which emphasizes humanity's increasing wickedness leading to the flood. For believers, the story of the Nephilim points to God's ultimate control over even the most chaotic and mysterious events. It challenges us to trust in His sovereignty and to remain faithful even in a world prone to moral decay. Number 9. The Cherubim. The cherubim are one of the most awe-inspiring and mysterious angelic beings in the Bible. They appear in several key passages and are consistently associated with the presence, glory, and holiness of God. In Ezekiel's vision, the cherubim are described as having a striking and complex appearance. Each cherub has 4 faces, a human face, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, Ezekiel 1 verse 10. These faces symbolize different aspects of God's creation. They are also described with 4 wings, 2 of which are used for covering their bodies and 2 for flying. Their bodies gleam like burnished bronze, and their movement is described as swift and purposeful, guided by the Spirit of God, Ezekiel 1 verses 6 to 14. In Ezekiel 10, the cherubim are explicitly linked to the throne of God, carrying His glory and serving as guardians of His holiness. In Exodus, God commands Moses to construct the Ark of the Covenant with 2 golden cherubim on its cover, known as the mercy seat. These cherubim face each other, their wings stretched upward, overshadowing the mercy seat, Exodus 25 verse 20. The cherubim symbolize God's presence, as the mercy seat is where God speaks to Moses and where His glory dwells among His people, Exodus 25 verse 22. In the Garden of Eden, after Adam and Eve are expelled, God places cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the way to the tree of life. This act emphasizes their role as protectors of God's sacred spaces and guardians of His holiness. The cherubim carry profound symbolic meaning, reflecting God's majesty, holiness, and authority. Guardians of holiness, the cherubim are often depicted as protectors of sacred places, such as the Garden of Eden and the Ark of the Covenant. Their presence signifies the unapproachable holiness of God, which sinful humanity cannot enter without atonement. God's glory and presence. Their close association with the throne of God in Ezekiel's vision and the Ark of the Covenant underscores their role as bearers of God's glory. They symbolize His sovereignty and His readiness to act in judgment or mercy. Comprehensive creation, the faces of the cherubim, human, lion, ox, and eagle, represent the pinnacle of God's creation. They encompass humanity, wild animals, domesticated beasts, and birds, demonstrating that all creation exists under God's dominion and reflects His glory. Number 10. The 4 living creatures. The 4 living creatures are described in Revelation 4 verses 6 to 8 as beings that surround God's throne in heaven, participating in ceaseless worship and praise. John writes, "In the center, around the throne, were 4 living creatures, and they were covered with eyes, in front and in back." Revelation 4 verse 6. Each creature has a unique appearance. The first creature resembles a lion, symbolizing strength and majesty. The second creature resembles an ox, symbolizing service and endurance. The third creature has a face like a man, symbolizing intelligence and reason. The fourth creature resembles a flying eagle, symbolizing swiftness and transcendence. These creatures each have 6 wings and are covered with eyes, signifying their ability to see and comprehend the fullness of God's glory. Day and night, they declare, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was, and is to come." Revelation 4 verse 8. The creatures are not passive observers, they lead heavenly worship, inspiring the 24 elders to fall down and cast their crowns before the throne, exalting God for His worthiness and creative power. Revelation 4 verses 9 to 11. The 4 living creatures are rich in symbolic meaning, representing different aspects of creation and their roles in worshiping the Creator. The lion, the king of wild animals, the lion represents power, courage, and authority. It symbolizes God's sovereignty and the majesty of His creation. The ox, a domesticated and hard-working animal, the ox symbolizes service, sacrifice, and endurance. It reflects God's provision and the dedication of His creation. The man, the pinnacle of creation, humanity symbolizes intelligence, reason, and relational capacity, uniquely reflecting the image of God. The eagle, the swift and soaring bird of the skies, the eagle symbolizes transcendence, spiritual elevation, and God's supreme vision over all creation. Their ceaseless worship highlights that all of creation exists to glorify God, and their varied appearances show the breadth and diversity of His works. The four living creatures echo the cherubim described in Ezekiel 1 verses 5 to 10 and Ezekiel 10, which also have four faces: lion, ox, man, and eagle. They also bear similarities to the seraphim in Isaiah 6. 2-3, who have 6 wings and continually cry, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty." These parallels suggest that the living creatures represent a higher order of angelic beings tasked with glorifying God and serving as intermediaries between the divine and the created world. Number 11, the locusts with human faces. The locusts with human faces are part of the vivid and terrifying imagery in Revelation chapter 9:1-11. During the sounding of the fifth trumpet, these locusts emerge from the abyss, a bottomless pit opened by a star that falls from heaven. They are not ordinary locusts that harm vegetation but supernatural beings with a specific task of tormenting humanity. Their appearance is both grotesque and symbolic. Human faces. Their human-like faces suggest intelligence or a reflection of humanity itself. Crowns of gold, indicating authority or perceived power, perhaps signifying their dominance during this period of judgment. Hair like women's hair, this may symbolize seduction, beauty, or deception, making them alluring yet deadly. Teeth like lions, reflecting their predatory and destructive nature. Wings like chariots, signifying their speed and relentlessness in carrying out their mission. Scorpion-like tails, their primary weapon. These tails inflict excruciating pain, tormenting those who lack the seal of God for 5 months, Revelation 9 verses 4-5. The locusts with human faces are rich in symbolic meaning, representing divine judgment, human corruption, and spiritual torment. Reflection of humanity's sins. Their human features may symbolize how humanity's own sins and rebellion against God bring about divine judgment. They serve as a mirror, showing that the torment they inflict is a consequence of humanity's rejection of God. The human-like faces could also represent the intentionality and intelligence behind their actions, contrasting with the blind destruction of natural locusts. Divine judgment and spiritual torment. These locusts do not harm plants or animals but specifically target people who lack God's seal, highlighting that their purpose is spiritual torment rather than ecological destruction. This judgment is not about physical annihilation but about a prolonged period of pain that reflects the consequences of separation from God. Deception and seduction. The locusts' hair like women's hair and their crowns suggest they are deceptive in appearance, perhaps initially appealing or alluring, but ultimately bringing destruction. This could symbolize how sin often appears attractive but leads to suffering and regret. The locusts with human faces are a powerful and terrifying image of divine judgment in Revelation. They symbolize the consequences of sin, the deceptive nature of evil, and the spiritual torment that results from separation from God. While their appearance may evoke fear, they also point to the hope and protection found in God for those who trust in Him. Number 12, the unicorn. The term unicorn appears in some older translations of the Bible, such as the King James Version, KJV. Verses like Psalm 92 verse 10 state, "But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of an unicorn, I shall be anointed with fresh oil." Other references to the unicorn can be found in Numbers 23:22, Deuteronomy 33 verse 17, Job 39 verses 9-10, and Isaiah 34 verse 7. In these passages, the unicorn is portrayed as a powerful and untamable creature with a prominent horn, often used as a symbol of strength, majesty, or wildness. Modern translations, however, avoid the term unicorn and instead use phrases like wild ox or aurochs, based on advances in linguistic and archaeological research. The Hebrew word re'em is now widely believed to refer to the aurochs, an extinct species of wild cattle known for its impressive size and strength. The biblical unicorn or wild ox, aurochs, serves as a symbol of strength and power. The animal is often associated with unparalleled might, representing God's creative power and the strength he bestows on his people. Untamable nature. In Job 39 verses 9-10, the re'em is described as a creature that cannot be domesticated, emphasizing the uncontrollable aspects of God's creation and his own sovereignty. For example, Numbers 23:22 states, God brought them out of Egypt. He hath as it were the strength of an unicorn, re'em, highlighting the overwhelming power of God in delivering Israel. The biblical unicorn, likely referring to the powerful and untamable wild ox, aurochs, serves as a symbol of strength and majesty in God's creation. Although mistranslations and cultural adaptations gave rise to the mythical unicorn in Christian art and literature, the true message of these passages remains: God is sovereign, and his power surpasses all understanding. This reminder encourages believers to trust in God's strength as they navigate the challenges of life. In conclusion, the Bible's descriptions of these creatures are rich with meaning, blending the physical, spiritual, and symbolic. Whether literal or metaphorical, they point us to deeper truths about God's power, judgment, and salvation. Which creature intrigued you the most? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to explore more mysteries of the Bible together. See you next time, and God bless.